like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Dan, could you lead us, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll open public session. Seeing no one here, we'll close public session. So today's meeting is a presentation on the town fiscal year 24 finance report. So this should take us to the year end and give us a good idea where we stand and where we're headed. So thank you. Bill Tappan is going to join us. Before we do that, let's take attendance. Right, Chris Blackstone is going to be delayed. Ned Carpenter. Here. Tim Choi.
Here.
Scott Foster.
Here.
Justin Lucer.
Here.
Brian Hickey is excused. Danielle Houghton is not here yet. Brian Rowley.
Here.
Dan Smith. Here. And Brian Ward.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. And Chris Wolf is here. All right. Okay. Thank you. All the business is done. Now you've got the floor.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone received it, but I sent out a memo that we were talking on the first time. Accompanying that was the both expenditure and revenue reports. So those are cumulative, so that you know that. So I'll get started by just going right to expenditures. And by the end of June, which is the fiscal year, and the also spend should be no more than 9%. The general fund as whole is 92%, was 91%, was 2% less than the prior year.
Thank you.
Oh, they're giving you a working microphone. You're moving up in the world.
I've been upgraded. Okay. Which was 2% less than the prior year. The total operating budget expenditure percentage was 92%, which was 1% above the prior year's expenditures. And in sum, the overall expenditures are within expected bounds. As long as we're nowhere near 100% on it, we're usually in very good shape. In terms of revenue, ending the revenue condition is positive with $39,715,761 accrued versus $36,375,917 the same period last year, which was an increase of 3.3+ million. And that increase is largely due to a tax revenue increase of 2.7 million over the prior year. And then some other notable increases that I mentioned in the memo. There was $236,753 from miscellaneous revenue, and that was driven largely by interest on investments, and then a transfer from the ambulance fund of $100,000. And then there was $82,106 from state, which was due to increases from meals and room tax and the highway block grant. And then a wastewater receipt increase of $113,439, which was mostly due to increases in state revenue and other miscellaneous revenue. The town ended fiscal year 2024 with expenses under budget and revenues outpacing projection by 2 percentage points. Like the prior year, the winter was relatively mild with warmer temperatures and less snow and ice, diminishing the need for salt usage, overtime, and part-time labor for plowing and cleanup. Weather aside, the regional rate of inflation has floated between 2.8 in July of 2023 and 3.5 in July of 2024, which means the inflationary pressures experienced last year, the prior fiscal year, have eased and should have been reflected in stabilizing prices. That said, we continue to experience price increases during the year. An example of price stickiness was in the labor market for part-time firefighters this past year. And then in this case, they were in quite high demand, partly driven by other municipalities competing for these people, particularly in the part-time space, not full-time per se, because there are so many part-time departments. And so the demand put upward pressure on the labor rates, making it difficult for the fire department to hire and maintain firefighters on staff, which was an issue. And so the staffing challenge was addressed through an increased pay rate, which made the town competitive with surrounding municipalities. That new pay rate resulted in firefighters applying for part-time positions, allowing the fire chief to adequately staff the department and for the town to continue providing the level of fire protection expected by its citizens. Since increasing the rate, the supply-demand curve equilibrium appears to have been achieved. As we look to the next fiscal year, there are reasons for cautious optimism about flattening cost curves, leading to reduced expense growth. However, that will depend on monetary and fiscal policy decisions made at the national level, as well as market behavior, all of which impact our municipal government. And that's it. So, are there any questions?
A quick one about just the increase largely due to the tax revenue increase. So I guess I'm curious, so is that reflective of some of the recent, I know there's just a big reevaluation, I think, in town that was completed. Is that reflective of that, or is that to come next year?
That's to come next year. There is market pressure that, you will see some incremental changes in valuations every year. And so, yes, that is partly reflected in that, I would say.
Do you have any kind of forecast or anticipation of what the impact to the revenue would be of that?
Are you talking about for the coming year?
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to say it, just because I haven't seen all the numbers. Everything, there are certain things that are estimated.
Of course, yeah.
And so, in fact, when I looked at the MS1, it was a draft MS1, and so we were looking at an estimated tax rate of, I think it was somewhere in the range of $18 to $19 per thousand. So, which is typical. Your rate when your your assessment goes up, then the rate drops.
Right.
But like I said, it's estimated, so I'm hesitant to shoot off my mouth without being more certain of the final numbers.
Just noting for the record that Chris Gladstone arrived at 6:38. So I know that a lot of people, if anybody who's watching, what the heck is going on in Newmarket, a lot of people were complaining, as you were saying, about the change in the valuations. But even if you take the time to try to explain what it means in terms of what the future tax rate is going to be, it's not always understood in terms of essentially, if it's the value that all the properties are going to go up to a certain level, but the town's budget requirements are going to be, last year plus some sort of a inflationary increase, and that results, as you said, in terms of the halving of or something like a significant reduction in the mill rate. Maybe you could just explain that so anybody who's listening can understand that a little bit better.
Actually did a good job right there. I'm not sure I can improve upon that. The one thing one response that I have to, I get it. Everyone is in the same boat, including me, where your assessed value of your property is going up. And so, and because it may be, again, I don't want to be talking out of school because this isn't really my role here, but it's been, I think it was the last time we did an assessment was 5 years ago. And so, one way to sort of ease the transitionary jump from one assessed valuation to the next is have them more often. I believe the city of Dover, for example, does it every year. And so then you're not, going through the shock of seeing such a significant change. I know there are some people who have been talking about, well, the value of my property can't possibly have gone up this much in this, short time span. It's hard to believe. I mean, in some respects, depending on the property we're talking about, but it is largely dependent upon or driven by market pressure. Mm-hmm. And that's not that's not the finance director of Newmarket trying to dodge a question. It's hard to understand sometimes. For example, one of the areas or the types of properties is manufactured home that's have increased substantially in terms of percentages. And the reason is, at least in part, because the desirability has gone up because they're more affordable. Mm-hmm. And so that drives people into that segment. And so then, because of that desirability increase, prices go up. It's just the way it is. It is basic supply and demand. Mm-hmm. The other thing is Newmarket has become, kind of the last stop in the seacoast, which, growing up, I never thought of Newmarket as the seacoast particularly, but now it very much is. Mm-hmm. And everybody sees it that way. It's sort of advertised that way, if you will. And so that comes with some benefits and costs. Costs meaning to the property owner of today, but the benefits of when you go to sell. The problem in all of this is, were you to try to sell your property, where are you going? Mm-hmm. That you're going to get, some great windfall as a result of the increase of your property value. And that's the challenge. And this is the one that I personally don't have an answer to unless you're planning on moving to, somewhere in Middle Tennessee. Not knocking Tennessee, mm-hmm. by the way. And so, being perfectly honest, it is a really complex situation that we're in, and it's not the result of, bad management. It's not the result of, poor management of government, in terms of overspending. You said it very well. You really did. And I wish I had, an answer. That I will say this: if we were in and I've been near communities, not in them, but near communities where they were in an economic free fall and your property values are dropping like a stone, that's the worst possible condition you can imagine yourself being in. You never want to be in that. So we're in not to be Panglossian about it, but you really are in a great situation in some respects, particularly when things are increasing in value. So it's, especially now that interest rates have dropped a bit, and even before then, we were already seeing inflation, which I mentioned in my report, we were already seeing inflation dropping significantly. So, because it came down from what, 7+% down to where it is today. So things are improving. It's just, it is a big jump for after 5 years, no doubt about it. I hope that helped.
Well, some of us remember 18% interest rates. You probably talked about it in your write-up, miscellaneous revenue being 200% of budget. Do you have any specifics on that?
Well, I did mention that largely that was driven by interest on investments and a transfer from, there was a transfer made from the ambulance fund, and that of $100,000, which really, that's pretty big, caused a big jump in that revenue. And I'm trying to remember exactly what the purpose of that was, but I believe that it was, and I could come back to you with if I'm incorrect. I believe that was to help firm up operations because they were having to spend more money in the short run, and I believe it was personnel related. But again, if I go back and check and find that I'm incorrect about that, I'll correct that with the committee.
You mentioned about ambulance, and it's just a question that with what's happening with Exeter Hospital dropping their paramedic service, does that have any impact in terms of the demand on our EMS?
I'm not sure. I think time will tell. I can't imagine that it wouldn't, but I'm unfortunately probably not the right person to ask. Definitely the fire chief would know far better than me. And I think he's trying to figure out, along with other fire chief, the people who do ambulance provision in the area are trying to figure this out as well. Yeah.
So does anybody have any thoughts, any other questions on the revenue side?
The water treatment fund is only 88%. Is that less
Yeah.
usage? Is it, what's the,
Yeah. Well, again,
but people haven't paid yet?
no, it's not that so much as I think there's a couple of dynamics at work. One is, and again, this is me as a finance director not knowing all the details of the way the mix works with that area, and because for example, we talk about if you have a lot of rain or whatever, or if you have people just being through efficiency measures using less water, then your revenues drop. But the other thing that's happening here is that there was an agreement made at one point earlier on between the council and the director of water and sewer or environmental services, and that was that he would be ratcheting this up over specific time periods. And I don't know if Brian was on the council at that time or not, but he may know more than I do even about this. But they don't necessarily go up every year, so that you're getting 100% of projected revenue.
You're talking about the rate?
Yes, the
Yes.
rate. So if the
But
rate doesn't
I understand
increase,
the rate, you see the rates go up, but I'm just curious because that's 12%.
sure.
And and I see last year's was 95, which isn't too bad, but,
Right.
so are they overestimating water usage? Have we done such a good job on, starting to fix those pipes and everything, and do you know, so for next year, are they planning on same usage, even though historically it appears that they've been estimating?
Well, 95 is pretty good. 88, I think, and I, again,
95 is good, right.
I do think this is, at least in part, related to the rates not increasing at the level that they should in order to recoup the costs that are involved. And that would make up for 12%, potentially. But in addition to that, I think it's more than that. It's also that there are energy efficiency measures. There's, so there's just plain less water waste and other things that I'm just not very well versed in. I'm sorry.
No, well, those are good things, efficiency and things like that, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Has the council decided or discussed at this point what they're thinking they want to retain for fund balance versus returning?
That has not been discussed with me.
Okay.
So, I mean, we had a reasonably good fund balance. I mean, we probably had this discussion before. In fact, I'm sure I brought this up with this group, that I think that we are underfunded in our fund balance, and the idea that we should constantly be using this to reduce taxes when we're barely at the DRA's recommended 8%, I don't think is particularly wise. But it is what it is. So I think we ended fund balance this year, we're around 3.3 million, which puts us, after 500,000 to reduce taxes, which was budgeted, puts you at about 8%, right at the DRA level. Now the town has, their requirement is 5%. But if we were going to, to be bonded on our own, instead of being lumped in with a bunch of other communities through the bond bank, we probably wouldn't be where we want to be in order to get the kind of rates we should get. So there's two ways of looking at that. Mine is have a better reserve, personally.
So how about some of the personnel budget here? We're looking at the police department. Are they still having difficulties with hiring and filling all the staff positions?
My understanding is they actually had a relatively good year in terms of getting people, but there was a retirement, maybe two, and so once you retire somebody, you bring somebody up, and then you backfill. You're usually getting people at a lower rate, so your costs are down. And then in addition to that, some of the things that we don't always think about is, it's not reflected in the police budget, it's reflected in the HR budget, but that's, healthcare costs. So your healthcare costs, when you have a retiree, there may be a two-person or a family, and then you're usually oftentimes replacing that cost with a single person. So
the HR costs are also, $300,000 lower than anticipated. A part of, is human resources cost 4155, does that take into consideration all of the town employees, police, fire, and everybody? And does that include their health insurance and things of that nature? What goes into that?
it includes everyone with the exception of the water and sewer. Yep, and library.
So if our payroll's down, it's going to be down as well in terms of...
Correct. Yep. Because all those associated costs with personnel, are linked to that. And so anytime you make changes and they're sort of not downgraded, but you're hiring somebody at a lower level, your costs are decreasing as a result, which is a good thing.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Economic development, we spent all $350 on it. What is that really for? When we put that in the budget, what are we thinking that we're going to spend that money on?
That's a really good question.
50 grand and we only spent...
Is that Newmarket Economic Development Council?
I don't believe so, no. I think
No, that's offline, that's separate.
Yeah, exactly. Again, this is one of those areas where it's not a budget that I particularly manage, and it's such a small budget, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. However, every time, as we're going through the budgeting process, I'm always wondering, okay, so how are we going to be using this money this year? Will we be?
Sounds like it'd be a good idea to use it.
So, yeah, exactly.
Not just waste
believe-
it, but,
Again, this is one of those, the town manager is actually reviewing the budget, the new budget for 2026 at this point, which, and I believe this is one of those where he is actually the person who does the planning around that. So,
So a part of, is that a marketing thing, or is it
I
a part
think-
of Bart's budget?
I
or-
want to say it is more of a, marketing, communications, that sort of thing. But, boy, you guys, you've hit me on all.
Well, with
all the-
Chronicle
either
coming
I'm
back,
not
what, 3
100%
times now?
sure,
Right?
or it's a
So,
tough
you know,
question. So,
We're not gonna have to pay any money for everyone
I
in the
apologize
state's
for
gonna
not
know
knowing more about
Newmarket.
that.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Okay. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so a question for you, Brian. We talked about the October meeting as being a presentation on the CIP process. Are you ready for that? Perfect, great. Okay, so next item is the August 26th minutes. Does anyone have a chance to read them? Any comments or anything like that? Do I have a motion to accept the, Dan?
If you look at page 1, I think it's line 39, I think that 470,899 was 2%. Because if it's .02, that would imply our budget is over $1 billion, which I don't think the
Okay.
taxpayers are going to be on board with.
So, all right, so it's just been typed in there incorrectly.
Yep.
So it's just 2%. Okay? All right, so that's line 39, at the end of line 39, where it says, and this year we have 470,889, or 2%, but it's written as 0.02%.
It's written properly as a decimal, but
If you were,
yeah.
if you were
you're an
doing it by
accountant,
multiplication.
Yes.
Leave the percentage in there too. right?
Okay, so we'll fix that. Any other adjustments that people have seen? I have to apologize, I'm a finance guy, I read right past that one, it says that's exactly how I would multiply it now. So,
I saw it, but I thought to myself, oh yeah, it's a multiplication problem.
yeah, so. Anything else? Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll
with
motion
that
to
one
accept.
adjustment.
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Ned Carpenter,
A
seconded by Chris Blackstone. All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anything else anybody else would like to add? The next meeting is October 28th, and Brian is going to fill us in on the CIP. Okay? Great, all right. I'll also send around the calendar just so everyone sees how the cadence is going to go, because it's just sort of come together in terms of, the November, December, January meeting cycle and what we'll be doing in each meeting. Okay, so you'll see that in next week or something like that. Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved to adjourn.
Motion made by Brian Rowley, seconded by Jacob Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.